that right? Okay, boom. According to that, I'm live. I am not sure if my sound is sounding okay. How is my sound sounding right now? I could possibly have two inputs. All of a sudden, my mic input just sort of busted when I started before. So I'm going to pay attention to the chat. I think this is working. I think you can hear me. Anyway, people wanting to talk about, I don't have a lot to say about Johnny Somali, but I do have something to say. So I thought I should put that in there. Yeah, so let's go in. We've got see who's in here. Lots of people I see already rocking in the comments right in front of me. I'm going to use the featured comment feature. Remember, good to see you, Cobra Stage, third in here. I missed the first two comments. I don't know what's off there. Audio's okay. Okay, thank you. That's a relief. Yeah, there's always something, right? Anyway, good to see you got Andrea Moboy, who, as you can see, she said my name. So as a result, it flashes orange in the comments that I can see, and that makes it work much better for me. So I appreciate if you do that. Who else we got in here? We've got Olivia D. Good to see Olivia D. Good morning to you. How's the butter stocks this week? The butter's good. Yeah, I haven't been going too crazy. I've been in Korea all week, so I guess it's been good for that. That's something else I'll be talking about. Just first time in Korea in a couple of years. Again, had a pretty good time there, actually. But yeah, go get a drink of water, go do that. Never fear, Shubhas, our man from Panama, is here. Good to see you, Shubhas. Oh, I've just realized there's a little thin line at the bottom of the screen, which is the other background. I didn't fix this. Oh, God, I never play with the settings live on the air. That's a really, really important rule, which I am about to break because it's annoying. Oh, it won't let me pull that all the way down. Why not? What if I do this? Now I can see at the top. Oh, okay, I'm going to do that. That is why one. Oh, there we go. Now I can make it full screen. There we go. Fixed, I think. Hopefully you can see that as looking fixed. Sorry, squirrels. Anyway, we've got Aaron. Yay for Sunday indeed. Good to see you. Nice to see Shubhas enjoying a nice cup of coffee there. Sorry about the lost mic. Natalie, good to see you. Indeed, have we smashed the like button like it owes money? There's actually more likes than viewers at the moment, so that seems to be working. Thank you, Aaron. Duly smashed indeed. Lots of people in here. Who else we got in here? We've got Mr. Cordy Chap. You are indeed not late for this one. Good to see you. Believe in yourself. Kicking Horse Coffee, smart ass, how could you resist? There you go. All sorts of people. Couldn't rank it in here. Good to see. Can someone let me know when we go live, please? Yeah, sorry about that. I just had some troubles at the last minute setting up the microphone, so apologies. Audio is okay according to Shubhas, so that's good. No Hiko ASMR, just not okay. So does that mean like my sound is better than usual? I don't seem to be maxing out at the moment, so I don't know. Maybe this is an improved setting. I am speaking a bit more clearly than usual. Greetings from Athens. I wish I knew how to say hello in Greek. Seems weird in a way that everyone knows how to say buongiorno and bonsoir and everything, but I don't know in Greek. I don't know. It's kind of strange. Anyway, good morning to you in Greek, which I know is not English. Comes from Greek originally, one way or another. So there you go. Is it easier to source butter in Korea? Well, again, I didn't go looking for it, but I found I had no butter problem, so that's probably a thing. Yeah, Aaron, that is indeed correct. Probably better not to know who Johnny Somali is. We're going to get to that. Yes, quit rank it. Well said. Got Irish Kerrygold butter. Yes, I saw that in America. Although I tried a little bit. I mean, yeah, I didn't really see why it was so expensive. But there you go. Yeah, broccoli. Someone's talking about broccoli. Yeah, there we go. Andrea Momboy talking about broccoli. Drinking to that indeed. Sainted Sir, excellent to see you. Hoping that, yeah, you're having a good day there. But Squatty Chip, not a new mic. I've always had the Yeti Blue. This has always been the same mic. I did have to, change the settings to plug it in again. So I don't know. Maybe that's made things sound better. I'm speaking a bit more clearly than usual at the moment. So possibly that could be it. It sounds odd to you. Oh no, it sounds odd. I wonder what's wrong with the sound. Ugh, I did, like I said, I just had to plug it in. I'm worried that you're getting double sound. And you know what? Just to avoid that risk, I'm going to mute the other one, which I think is dead anyway. Yeah, the other one's maxing out at the moment, so perhaps that was causing a buzzing or an error or something. So anyway, I've dubbed out of the other one, which by the way was like a stereo mic on the old setting. I don't think this is stereo right now. That could be it as well. But there we go. So looks like everybody has caught up, so that is a good thing. And with that, let's dive into the topics this week. I'll talk about Johnny Somali because I don't have an awful lot to say about it, but yeah, it's been a huge topic of discussion this week because, of course, he was arrested. So, given as someone not following it very closely, let me give you my quick hot take and understanding. With the understanding that some of the facts may be incorrect, but more or less, this is just building up to my hot take. Johnny Somali is a kick streamer. I thought they were called kick streamers because you see them and you want to kick them, but apparently no, it's because they were kicked off every other platform. They wanted to like beat Twitch and use YouTube and become the new hot live streaming platform primarily for gamers. So they decided to build their platform around accepting people who are banned from every other platform, and this includes not only racist gamers but also prank YouTubers and so on. And so there were among the many banned YouTubers and live streamers who made it onto Kick was a person who I wish I didn't know his name. The fact that I know his name as a result of him being an a-hole means in a way that terrorists have won, but we're going through this and hopefully I'm never going to talk about it ever again. There is this character, Johnny Somali, who apparently came to Japan, as people do. Him and a friend would go around live streaming, walking around, pranking people. And by pranking people, he would basically provoke, he would basically just attack random people on the live stream and try to get them to react badly to him. Basically, he would deliberately sort of annoy and harass people, and when they reacted, he would accuse them of being racist and then say Fukushima, Nagasaki, and basically make fun of Japan for being A-bombed, and then make fun of Japan for Fukushima, and accuse people of being racist because he is. I don't know if he's actually an American citizen, but he's I believe African American heritage. And was doing this everywhere, and actually got to a point where there was a stream about a week ago, actually. Well, there were three videos in particular, maybe two, actually. One, where back in August, among the many, many pranks that he was doing, he went into a construction site and hid, wearing a mask, and jumped out, scaring some of the workers on the construction site where they were building a building. And he was the annoyed staff of the construction site basically forcibly kicked him off the site, which is of course trespassing and of course kind of like a safety hazard, among other things. So they kicked him off, and he got lots of views for that. Then there was another scene, I believe in Shibuya, where he was harassing some people who sort of identified him and were giving him they sort of said, you shouldn't do what you do, and he sort of started harassing them, and somebody caught him in the middle of sort of basically trying to provoke some random people in the street, and again, I don't know if this was staged, but punched him out, Colt and his friend, in the middle of the stream. And lots of people, including people at PDR, not PDS, PDR-san, who that I like, he did a big video saying this was like his best video ever. And he, for what it's worth, he did get a real swollen lip from it. He was actually properly sort of, both sort of, again, not advocating. I don't know that physical violence, even for someone like that, is necessarily the right way to handle things. I mean, the person who did it shouldn't have done it, but there again, couldn't have happened to a nicer person. So while everybody is celebrating that, the third and final video was Johnny Somali was basically arrested. The Osaka police marched up, and apparently it was based on a complaint by the construction company about him trespassing on the construction site the other week, that he that the police came up. They got a warrant. There was a complaint for the trespass. And indeed, apparently there was an accident involving the trespasser that led to people getting injured at a different construction site last week. So the police showed up with a warrant, and they arrested him, and they put him in detention. And him getting put in detention and the international news attention that it gathered caused the Japanese news to pay attention to him. And there was a video of him like leaving detention holding cells the other day in a car with media taking photos of him, and he looked really, really happy. And people saying, "Oh no, now he's happy. This is exactly what he wanted." The thing is, I don't think he really fully understands what he's gotten himself into. And this is where my commentary now comes into it. First of all, he was Kalimera. Thank you for that, Kubrastenshi. To appreciate the education there. So here's the thing. I mean, the way that I characterized this when I gave my one and only comment on it, which let me see if I can find because it wasn't that long ago. I called this sort of a version of Gaijin smashing. For those who don't know what Gaijin smashing is, some said that when I said it, it was like the first time they'd heard the term in a long time, which it may well be, but here we go. All I'm going to say about this is don't be this guy. Police are pretty tolerant in Japan, but when they decide to get you, it can get brutal fast, as this guy is no doubt deservedly finding out. This is the logical end game of Gaijin smashing and finding out. That is to say, there is certainly, there's two things. The phenomenon of Gaijin smashing is that thing of foreigners getting away with stuff, acting like dickheads, and getting away with it because they're foreigners. And you get away with it. There's kind of two sides of this dimension. Not everybody does this, but there certainly is that thing. One, when you're in a country where no one knows you and you don't have any social accountability and you're leaving anyway, so you don't really care what people think of you or whatever, there was that kind of freedom that a lot of people discover when they come to a place like Japan, whether they're teaching English or working at a bank or whatever, where they might act in ways that other people that they might not do in their own home country, or if they're around people who they feel accountable to. But when you're traveling abroad, this idea, you only live once. What are they going to do about it? And the other flip side of it is, in Japan, it is true as well, that police and so on find it a hassle dealing with foreigners. It's like when they see a foreigner's done something, they immediately see all of the the hassles involved with that, and as a result, partly of just the trouble. This is probably less now than in the past, but certainly just the general perceived trouble of both dealing with language and possibly dealing with consular stuff and so on. That police generally go easier and they give a wider berth to foreigners. And I'd say, honestly, the police in Japan, they're not like stop and frisking or whatever. The policing techniques here are not very aggressive towards the community at all. They do give you a wide berth, and on top of that wide berth, they give foreigners a wider berth. I know that some people don't like getting stopped for their Gaijin card being checked or whatever. But even that, if you're getting caught, like, for example, I mean, nowadays, maybe less so, but back in the day, things like traffic, speeding, or even drunk driving back in the day, the police would see you and just go, yeah, just go ahead and don't do it again. Maybe less so nowadays, but that was something that would particularly happen. People would see this and take their cue and act like particularly just obnoxious people. Now, these live streamers are kind of a slightly different phenomenon, but I think they're acting from that same place of, not only can I get famous in Japan or famous as a live streamer or as a prankster or whatever, but also doing it in Japan, that feeling of diplomatic immunity that a lot of foreigners feel to be obnoxious, and to act in particularly antisocial ways. This is definitely something that you hear. Even I think in the beginning, you might even feel to an extent. And you might have this aura that, when you see that the police are not really enforcing, that they won't do anything. But here's the thing about Japan. I've talked about this before. The police will let you go. They'll give you a lot of rope. They'll let you go quite a long way. But when they decide to get you, you are done. What Johnny Somali is likely in for right now. The best case is, I mean, if I was his lawyer, and thank God I'm not, because I wouldn't want to be, here's the thing. Remember, Japan is constantly in trouble with international human rights groups because of the way its police interrogate, detain, and process. Its justice system is actually particularly brutal once it kicks into gear. It takes a lot to kick into gear, but when it does, you're kind of screwed. I know personally of cases of people who were innocent, where it was all a misunderstanding, but when the police decided to charge and they decided to go through to a trial for it to be cleared, that means just automatically you're going to be isolated in prison, cut off from the rest of the world, basically thrown into a hole for more than 12 months. What Johnny faces, if I was his lawyer, what I would advise to him is cop to everything, apologize, and seek deportation. Like, he's not going to be able to come back to Japan for, I think, 5 years if you're deported, maybe 10 years. I believe it's 5 years. That's his best case, that he, gets put into immigration detention and has to buy an expensive air ticket and leave the country within a couple of weeks, stays in jail for a couple of weeks and leaves the country. That's his best case scenario, and that's what he should be doing. However, that's only if the police decide that they don't want to go through the hassle of actually criminally charging him and putting him into the justice system. However, what I believe is the fact that the police went to the trouble of investigating his videos, no doubt after a number of public complaints, getting a warrant from a judge to go find him, raid him, arrest him. They've invested resources in this. So the idea that they're just going to put him on a plane and give him basically a get out of jail free card says that they're probably committing to actually prosecuting this guy. They detained him for now just for trespassing. But as you know, the way that this works in Japan is that, the police will detain you. They can detain you. Most countries, they can only detain you for up to 3 days before they charge you. In Japan, they can hold you for up to 23 days on a charge. But if they don't charge you after that, don't worry, because what they'll do is they'll rearrest you on something else, and they'll just extend the detention. And basically, the goal of detention is it saves them the trouble of gathering evidence. It's in order to coerce a confession, which again is why I would advise just confess as fast as possible. But again, if the police want to detain you, they'll keep you in police detention. And when they keep you in police detention for interrogation, you don't have a right to a phone call. You don't have a right to a lawyer. The police control your sleep, your food, your access to information, as well as information about you that comes out, and which can be everything from completely cutting you off from the world and lying to you about what other people are saying to you or about you. And basically, they get to hold you hostage and do whatever they like to you for like months. It can go for months. When they decide to charge you, then you have to wait for trial. You'll be in jail, I guess. I don't think it's actually prison while you're waiting, but they'll hold you in detention typically. And typically trials on criminal matters takes more than 12 months to come up. There was actually a case involving some Japanese company presidents who were charged with an accounting fraud last year, who were actually, the whole thing was based on forged evidence from the police. And yet it took 1.5 years for them to come to trial and this to come to light and for them to be released. And while the 3 executives of this company were waiting for their trial to clear their name, one of them died of medical complications in prison. So, even if you're innocent, you can still be facing at least 12 months in jail. Let alone, again, they invest all these resources. They're probably going to seek a sentence and then they'll deport you after you get out. So, like I say, he was all smiling. He'd been in jail for about a day and was smiling and waving to the cameras coming out of the jail. And I think he'll continue smiling and waving if he gets deported immediately. But if they actually do decide to follow through with the prosecution, at least for now, for trespassing, but I imagine what they're going to do is they're going to rearrest him and put more charges on him and just keep squeezing him. He is in for hell. I mean, he is in for, you always talk about, you measure a justice system by, how it treats its least sympathetic offenders, which of course in Japan, when you talk about the death penalty, Japan has the death penalty in principle in cases involving multiple murders. And right now we have the Kyoto animation case involving the guy who believes, who wrote a novel and submitted it for a competition for a theme on an anime, which he didn't get the prize, but he believed that Kyoto Animation stole his novel. And in revenge, he bought a bunch of gas cans and went to the animation studio, set the building on fire and murdered 35 people. He's like the quintessential least sympathetic. And I'd say even for him, we shouldn't have the death penalty, although again, couldn't happen to a nicer person. Japan's justice system is kind of messed up, and it's kind of it encourages police corruption. And online, seeing the talk about the specific police station where he's going to be held and interrogated, the South Osaka police station, it has a reputation because they've got a bunch of Yakuza in that neighborhood, so the police there themselves are basically indistinguishable from Yakuza. It has a particularly bad reputation. So like I say, he is in for a terrible time. He is in for a really bad time, and while I wouldn't say that he deserves to have his human rights abused, he does deserve to be arrested and to be facing justice for basically live streaming, criminal nuisance, basically harassing people, trespassing, You know, and the fact that what he does just reflects so badly on his, you know, on all foreigners. Frankly, we all get wrapped up in it. When someone has a bad experience with a foreigner, that becomes their understanding and education about foreigners. So a lot of foreigners in particular have been the loudest about until he was arrested, saying this guy should be arrested or deported. But now he is in the system, and he is in the South Osaka police station, and he's gone into a hole, and you're not going to hear about him probably for a few weeks now. And probably you might not hear any news possibly for months. And he is not going to be smiling when he comes out of there. Right? If he is, it'll be kind of amazing. Yeah, he is in a lot of trouble right now, and the sort of trouble that typically you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, but he's going to get it. And some people say he deserves it. I would say, yeah, I mean, literally that's trying it on and finding out. Don't be that guy. That's my comment. Wow, that was a long-winded comment, but where we got to. So he wasn't released, by the way. He was transferred. Sorry, I see. Or was he released? I didn't see any news about him being released, Aaron. But no, he was driven. The police sort of put him in the back of a car and transferred him between interrogation centers and holding cells. And he was like smiling and waving when he went past the press for that. I don't believe that he was released, but there again, I might not be up to date on the latest news on that. So anyway, that is, yeah, I thought I'd just spend a minute on that, but that went for a long time. So don't be Johnny Somali. But there again, if you're wishing bad things to happen to him, I assure you they are currently happening and are going to happen to him in a way that will probably almost make you feel sorry for him. But again, this is a guy who is really, really, literally asking. I don't think he realized what he was asking for, but he was asking for what he's now receiving. And don't be that guy. Seriously, not worth it when they decide to get you. DJay, sunny side up. Awesome to see you. Late in Japan, indeed. I'm going to go through, see if I can see any new names in here. Boom. And Savas Musician, good to see you. He was arrested about 48 hours ago for luring a minor. This is Johnny Somali. He was arrested for trespass in the news that I saw. I don't know if they charged him with something else, but anyway, yeah. Yeti, good to see you. Long time no see. No notification from YouTube yet again. That's disappointing. I did accidentally set up the time to go instant, and then I fixed the timer for an hour. Apparently notifications do work if you set it up more than half an hour in advance. So I'm deliberately setting this up, today, 1 hour, 10 minutes in advance, although I messed up with the timer on it. So I'm sorry about that. But yeah. Is there a censored comment there? I don't know. Kerberos Tenchi, one of the reasons that you hate DDE, years ago I don't know what DDE means, Dance Evolution. No, that would be revolution. Right, this would be like about little fungus turning into animals. One of the years ago, they came to Japan. They drove in supercars recklessly on a famous beach. Police didn't do much at the time, but it probably didn't help other people. Yeah, that whole thing about drunk English teachers tossing rubbish bags off the balcony and so on, and not giving a shit. The result is that the next person who wants to get an apartment in that building who's a foreigner is told that we don't have foreigners here because we had trouble with them. I mean, that, and again, doesn't justify what would be in many countries illegal racism of the landlord, but truth is, people acting like Gaijin smashers, results in other Gaijins getting smashed. They ruin it for everybody else. And yeah, I feel a lot of animosity in people who are doing, stuff that they shouldn't be doing. Tawaiwai, good to see you there. Police or prosecutors decide the course of action. Prosecutors, of course, but police will generally just hold them. The prosecutors in Japan are super conservative. They won't go until this is an airtight case. And police are generally not very capable in terms of getting things like evidence and so on. So instead of getting evidence, they coerce confessions. They get that way they wrap up the case. And they just basically detain them indefinitely, like for weeks and months, and they control their food. They sleep deprive them. They interrogate them nonstop, and they tell them that all your families already confessed that you did it, and they lie to them and whatever, and just get them to basically remembering most Western countries, a 72-hour detention is considered enough to coerce false confessions to murder. In Japan, it's like a 23-day detention is the baseline for like a standard crime. So yeah, the prosecutors won't go ahead unless they have it really locked in. And it's pretty rare to go ahead without a confession. And the police are often not good at getting, and this is why the police keep extending until they get a confession, why they're so good at coercing confessions, because, the prosecutors won't go ahead otherwise. Good to see you, Tawaiwai. Kurasenshi, you're pretty sure if he gets out, he will turn it around and gets all sympathy from his followers for all the bad treatment he received. Yeah, he'll be the next Carlos Ghosn, I'm sure. G'day or Gisol. Gasol. Is that it? Did I say that? I'm not sure. I'd love to get the pronunciation for that, but thanks for the education there, Black Tengu. Gasol. I like that, if that's what it is. I'm sure I didn't pronounce it correctly, but I do appreciate the education there. Some say you can't fix stupid. Indeed. Some say. Yodi started to think perhaps that you were the culprit because they found your fingerprints on it. My word about the detention system started to creep in your head. Yeah, certainly the old... they'll have you thinking 23 days of sleep deprivation, food deprivation, and constant interrogation. They'll have you thinking that you did what they told you they did. So yeah. Rude artist, looks like Johnny's in for a grand old time. Munches popcorn. Well, yeah, like I say, and while indeed I think the whole internet, not a single person in the world feels sympathy. Bear in mind, he really is in for a really, really bad time. He is in for a sufficiently bad time that people may actually feel sorry for him at the end of it. But hell, I mean, he didn't even go make a Netflix special of it. But Mr. Cordy Chad, maybe he can get into trouble with the Singapore system. They still do caning. I suspect that's why he chose to come to Japan and not Singapore. I mean, seriously, he just live streamed chewing gum and they would already start whipping him, I believe. But there you go. It's Yasu, as in Yasuhiro. Oh, are we talking about Greek? Oh, is that what you mean? I'm not sure if Yasu. I'm confused now, Savas. But anyway, thank you for trying to educate me. Anyway, I'm going to rush through. That's already half the show on Johnny Somali. Although give the people what they want. Indeed, I'm going to push forward now. If you want fame, he's got it. But be careful what you wish for. Carlos Ghosn is apparently suing Nissan for $1 billion. But I'm sure Nissan's answer would be come back to Japan and get it. Again, you talk about a case here where Carlos Ghosn's whole plea for sympathy is based on, just like Johnny Somali, I was detained. The police were so mean to me when they were detaining me. They made me stay in my luxury apartment with an ankle bracelet. He was actually held for a long time by police. It was, basically through diplomatic lobbying and whatever that he managed to get a very special exemption that Japanese don't get for house arrest. And still, he considered that to be a violation of his human rights that made him smuggle himself back to Lebanon, where he is now hiding out in corporate housing paid for by Nissan. That Nissan has not been successful in kicking him out of. And now he wants him to pay him $1 billion. This is... believe me, Carlos Ghosn is like the best case of, he literally hired the A-team and an airplane, a private airplane, to fly him out of Japan. I'm sure that there's money to be made in kick streaming, but probably not enough to do what Carlos Ghosn did. So, this is the best case scenario of what Johnny faces. While I would have had sympathy for Carlos Ghosn, at least to the point if he had gotten to the trial and his legal advisor, the other guy, the American who's on trial, I don't know where that went actually, but he actually had a strong case, I believe, that he was innocent. And it would have been interesting to see this go to trial and to see justice actually be done. But, the point is, whether Carlos Ghosn was guilty or not of the charges that he was facing, which he insists he was innocent, but he did break the law the moment he, basically broke out of house arrest and fled the country. He is actually a fugitive now. So he is a criminal. I mean, that's objective. In any country, if you do what he did, there's no country in the world where you would not be considered a fugitive and a criminal for doing what he did. So, I do not have sympathy for him as much as I acknowledge his, concerns about the Japanese justice system, even in the case of Johnny Somali. Still isn't a justification for doing what he did. No one else can do what he did. No one else has billions of dollars like he does to run away. By the way, I think it was Dan H. who recommended, there's an interview in Lebanese with him on what is it? After Dinner with Sade. It's like a Lebanese podcast, which I got really into watching. It's a really great thing. It's subtitled in English. It was interesting listening to him, but I still have no sympathy for the guy. But anyway, Carlos Ghosn, victim, billionaire victim of justice, forced to run away in a cello box on his private jet by the A-team, just like any down on his luck, Joe now suing for $1 billion to try to build his life back from the company that caught him embezzling funds. Seriously, there's things that you can do. I believe there is actually a Netflix movie being made about Carlos Ghosn. But yeah, I think he doesn't deserve the positive attention. Kind of interesting. Actually, Kono Taro Kono likes to insist on being called Kono Taro, so I would call him that. The digital minister, who has punishment for his poor performance with the My Number social security system, has been left in his role during the cabinet reshuffle. Normally you think that they'd be firing the guy for bad performance, but no one else wants to do his job, so his punishment is he has to stay in the role and keep getting beaten up for it. Apparently, Horiemon, what's his first name? I forget his first name, but Horie, the guy who started LiveDawn, sort of Japanese eccentric billionaire, he was complaining that Japan doesn't have Uber, and that half the country is having shortages of taxi drivers. Tourism's coming back, and tourists can't catch taxis, and yet we don't allow ride sharing like they do in America. Kono Taro called a press conference and said, "Yeah, digital agency is gonna look into allowing ride sharing like Uber." In order to compensate for the lack of taxi drivers in many areas. I don't know exactly. I mean, one, it's kind of weird for the digital minister to say that, not the Ministry of Transport. It's also important to think about what taxis are in Japan, which is the same as they are in many countries. They're not just like a sort of a public service. They're a highly regulated industry where the drivers have to have strict qualifications and background checks and so on. The cars have to meet safety standards. They have to pay, often for limited sort of licenses, limited permits to be able to drive the cars. It's a highly regulated industry, and part of the idea is to make sure that you don't have mass murderers and rapists, driving cabs and or people who are driving unsafe cars or whatever. And again, the whole way that ride sharing has worked in a lot of places is one, that it's had one of two things. Either it's introduces basically allowed sort of criminals to drive around in unsafe cars, leading to a lot of incidents involving people, and so on. And these companies have had to scramble to improve to basically become like taxi companies in terms of the requirements for checking backgrounds and so on. And another thing is that in highly regulated markets, I don't know what the situation is in Japan, but where taxi drivers have to pay like $500,000 to get a permit for a single car because of the guaranteed income they'll get from that. And that's all blown away by allowing, ride sharing. The people who have invested sometimes their life savings into getting these taxi permits are left destitute by an arbitrary decision of government to decide that you don't need a permit anymore. They should, if the government is going to allow that, among the many things that they'll have to figure out is, what's going to be different about regulating, regular cars and car sharing from taxis, and what are they going to do to compensate people who are going to possibly losing these kind of quasi-monopolies that are there. That's it, I do agree. The shortage of drivers is affecting truck drivers in Japan, taxis and so on. There is a shortage of taxi drivers in a lot of rural areas. And it's affecting elderly who can't drive anymore, as well as tourists and so on. And this is a problem. I do think that the ultimate solution to this, that I really thought that Japan might be at the leading edge of innovating, and maybe it is, and I just don't know about it, is getting these robot self-driving cars going. That's a very Japanese solution. But in the meantime, given that that's not coming, Elon Musk has been promising it 6 months away for 7 or 8 years now. So given that self-driving cars are not here yet, they have to figure out how to get more drivers onto the road. And I don't know that they're going to magically appear either. I mean, if someone's dream is to become an Uber driver, they'll become taxi drivers, or truck drivers or whatever. And we have shortages of taxi drivers and truck drivers, and it's not clear that there's anything in particular that simply allowing Uber drivers is going to address this. But we'll see. It's good that he is at least looking into the reasons for it. And I am hoping that there is ultimately a technological solution for it. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, Taro Aso, says Mr. Cordy Chip. He is a bit of an a-ho, he says. I am just looking The other comments here, nothing directed at me. Freaking laser beams. Yes, he wants $1 billion. And sharks with lasers mounted on their heads from this set. I'm pretty sure that's what Carlos Ghosn wanted in his lawsuit. Let's keep going through. 20 minutes left, and I've covered 2 stories. Well, that's not good. I've started watching. I've just rejoined Disney because Lad wanted to watch something. So I went and I am watching now Only Murders in the Building and Ahsoka, and I am enjoying both of those. They're pretty good. That said, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to get those straight away, but there we go. Just random. I don't share many YouTube videos, although I've been watching a lot, but there's a great video that I subscribe to, and I watch all the videos from this channel, but they've done a long video going through basically summarizing every ethnic group and religion in the entire Middle East and their histories and why it was so hard to partition the Middle East. And my brain exploded. It's the densest, most interesting. Like 100 years ago, Baghdad, if instead of Muslims you separate Sunni and Shia as separate religious groups, Baghdad was a majority Jewish city 100 years ago. I knew that there were Jews all over the Middle East, including including Iraq and so on, but I had no idea that there was actually majority Jewish. Well, not majority, but they were the largest group in that city 100 years ago, and now there's 0. They've been pretty much expelled. So. Among all the other, there were snippets of all sorts of little, this crazy bits of information, like the Druze, who are now basically in Lebanon, came from Egypt. They were kicked out of Egypt and so on. And there's just so many. Like for 44 minutes, it's just dozens of these sort of snippets of just how crazy and mobile and dynamic the Middle East is. Just a random thing, but super interesting. Rugby World Cup was good. There were 2 really great games yesterday. The Portugal-Georgia game, just 2 tier 2 countries, had probably the most exciting. It ended in a draw, which was a shame because it was probably the most exciting game I've seen so far. And South Africa-Ireland was amazing. I don't know how South Africa lost. Congrats, Ireland. But yeah, to me, really felt like watching New Zealand, watching South Africa play better than Ireland and still being behind. That's what New Zealand gets like when they lose, but there you go. Believe in yourself. The same issue for families holding to the taxi permits added much fuel to the Uber, to fire for Uber and the like. No, it's a big problem. It's actually in Australia. It's something which affects my own family as well. My mum had invested in taxi permits, and the government decided to suddenly deregulate without any plan to compensate people who poured their life savings into taxi permits, and it's really ruined the lives of people who had followed the rules and gone by the book and set up these taxi companies or set up these cabs and following a lot of rules. And the government suddenly deregulating, somebody wanting to deregulate. Good idea, but you got to do right by people and pay it off. So Black Tengu. The Ottoman Empire really messed up the Middle East. It messed up a lot of things, yes, including the Middle East. There's just, but still fascinating. You think you know a little bit about stuff, and you find out that every small thing is so complex. By the way, I see that we have. There's the other big story this week, by the way, which I don't think I've got in here, of course, is the the Azeri invasion of Karabakh. It's actually, I think I mentioned before, in my politics degree, and one of my specialist subjects was ethnic conflict in the post-USSR. It actually was. I had the former Soviet ambassador to New Zealand as a professor who himself was actually Armenian. And he spent a lot of time talking about the Karabakh conflict, which is just crazy, crazy deep and a complicated conflict. But the recent Russia being distracted by Ukraine and, the Azeris basically just pumping all of their oil money into military spending. They've just gone in. I'm kind of glad in a way that it ended quickly and that it hasn't resulted in the full-on invasion of, Armenia proper. But still, it looks like even with hostilities over, that things aren't over for the people in Karabakh, for the Armenian people in that region. But that's a concerning bit of news which I'm watching. Even though Karabakh isn't recognized as an independent country by anyone other than Armenia and not as part of Armenia, it still doesn't mean. Azerbaijan's got what it's got. It got what it wanted. It's gotten control of the territory back. So I hope they do right by that. But again, we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I went to Korea this week. Fernando V, good to see you. What do I think about Somali's arrest? I spent the first 35 minutes of this talking about it. So if you want to hear about that, do go back to the start of the video, and I shared my thoughts about it. Someone talking about politics in Australia. Speaking of politics in Australia, that's another thing. They're having this referendum on The Voice in October. I kind of feel half like I shouldn't talk about that because I'm not Australian, but my mum's Australian, my sister's Australian. I could be Australian whenever I wanted to by virtue of my mum's citizenship. My home outside of Japan is Australia. And I am keenly interested in, I'm proud of my Australian heritage, which actually is even on my New Zealand side. They were immigrants from Australia, or at least, my grandmother's father. So kind of on both sides, I have Australian heritage. And, one thing New Zealanders kind of like to make fun of Australia as being like, basically an apartheid racist version of New Zealand, when we're being particularly mean. But for the way that they sort of have constitutionally abused their Indigenous Australians. I mean, it was in the Constitution of Australia until the 1970s that you were not to count Indigenous Australians as humans in national censuses. They were counted with animals. And that reflected their civil rights. I mean, in many ways, even South Africa recognized, even with apartheid, they didn't classify Indigenous people in Africa as animals. I don't think even in America it was that bad. So, Australia has recent, terrible, constitutionally embedded deep racism. And this referendum that they're having in Australia is basically to create a body to advise, which has no power whatsoever, but it basically means that on any laws that have implications for Aboriginal Australians, for Indigenous Australians, that it will simply be able to advise on whether this is a good law or not, or whether they need to reconsider something, and to attach notes to the legislation for consideration of the elected politicians. That's all that it is. It's literally just a powerless advice-giving function, just to act as some kind of check to stop the kind of abuse that's been happening to Indigenous Australians for 200 years in Australia. And yet somehow the discussion, the referendum that they're having to create this powerless advisory, basically cross-check, I guess, 200 years of constitutional racism, is to put a mild correction into the Constitution to give them a little bit of an extra say. And everyone in Australia is like, oh no, that's racist. If we give Aboriginals special rights, that's discrimination. With no sense of irony whatsoever. It's mind-bending watching how Australia's just gone. For what it's worth, I think Australia's had 40 constitutional referendums and only 8 of them have ever passed. So Aussies don't like referendums. They always shoot them down anyway. But it is bringing out some pretty ugly, and it looks like, and honestly, if Australia votes no on The Voice, in my personal opinion, it will be Australia voting to affirm their historic embedded constitutional and societal racism, and it affirms that. And it's such a token gesture. Like, it's not even 1% of what Australia needs to do to actually reconcile and right its wrongs. And yet, even that's too much for so many people there, and the discussion there is so hysterical and toxic already. And it's so disappointing, but it is everywhere, right? I mean, New Zealand didn't want the laser-eyed Kiwis. They voted that down for the national flag in our flag referendum. Everywhere always disappoints when you actually leave it up to the people. Democracy, it just doesn't work. I do hope that Australians do vote yes, although ultimately it's up to Australians. And it sounds like a lot of the FUD, the fear and doubt, fear, uncertainty and doubt that, does this mean we're really going to have to give all the land back to the Aboriginals, and is there going to be a treaty, and what are the secret notes, is like full-on QAnon level, like paranoia about this thing, which should be a no-brainer referendum, but I hope that it happens there. So that's politics in Australia. But yeah, that's another thing I've been watching. The main topic I was planning to talk about this week, I just spent a week in Korea. I went on Monday, came back on Friday night. I had a lovely week. It's just nice to be somewhere that's not like crazy hot. It still is hot, but it's like 5 degrees less than Tokyo. It's kind of funny. I've been getting, ever since I first went to Korea in 1999, and I've been going there every year, always to Seoul. I haven't been anywhere else in Korea. And I'm getting these snapshots of Korea like every couple of years. The whole time I've been 24, 25 years. And yeah, it was nice. I mean, it's always like, I really like, my Korean co-workers are nice people. And one thing I like about Korea is that Koreans, more than Japanese, are upfront with who they are or what they think. We're good and bad. They don't hide if they don't like you. So if they like you, it's sincere, which is nice. Yeah, genuinely really nice people, excellent food, man. I had such good food there. They asked me if I wanted to go out for sort of fancy food, and I was like, no, I want to go to like kitchen style cooking. That's what I've always found was the best. And I had some great food when I was there. Of course, a lot of sodium, a lot of salt, and also the coffee culture there. It's not refined coffee culture. It's caffeine, as a kind of amphetamine substitute. Like there's cheap, horrible coffee everywhere. There's also quite good, expensive coffee, but it's all still basically there as that hit to work. There was a thing when I was in America. I generally work till about 7 p.m. And I'll have a coffee in the morning, and in the afternoon, like after lunch, about 3 o'clock, you start to feel a bit drowsy. And if I've got a meeting at 3, I'll sometimes be at a 3 o'clock meeting, passing out, and realizing, oh, I'm getting dozy in the afternoon. I need to go get a coffee. As soon as this meeting finishes, I'm going to run out and get a coffee so I can push through to 7 o'clock or whatever when I normally would finish working. And I'd go out, and every coffee place in Seattle closes at 4 o'clock. If you leave at 4 o'clock, if you got to figure out how to rush out before 4 to get your second coffee kick. And I'd always ask Americans, like, why does every coffee place close at 4 o'clock? And they would say to me, why do you need coffee at 4 o'clock? Because, again, for most people, that's when they're actually trying to get in their cars to beat the rush hour home. So the concept of having coffee, like, I guess to them, having coffee at 4 p.m. sounds like having coffee at 10 p.m. In Korea, I did discover that you go out at 10, 11 p.m. The only places that are open are coffee places that serve only coffee, and they are full of people drinking dark, full on like espressos at like 11 p.m. So Korea's the opposite extreme. I'm happy if it's just open till 7 p.m. I'm not going to drink coffee late at night. I do. It was cool. I did a lot of running. For the first time I've been running in Korea. I went running around the Han River. I was running around Gangnam. I was staying and working in Gangnam, so I was running Gangnam style. I had a great time there with that. And yeah, what else have I got here? Let's see if I think I post a thread of thoughts. The food is amazing. It is expensive. It's like, geez, it's like American prices basically for coffee, and maybe even more than that for pastries and stuff. Delicious and high quality, but expensive compared to Japan. Yeah, 7-Elevens everywhere, sort of jumbly, but at the same time, yeah, sort of clean. You can tell that that the incomes there are higher than Japan now. It's developed really fast, so it's kind of always cool to see them coming along. Just coming back to the Johnny Somali thing, Jeffrey G. Hall, by the way, I often retweet him. He picks up a lot of news and comments on it thoughtfully. So pointing out, somebody was saying that, what, they're just arresting him for trespassing. That seems a very token way of getting him. And then rightfully pointing out that no, it's dangerous. When they say don't trespass on a construction site, it's because it's hazardous, not just to the people trespassing, but to people also working on the site as well. 10-minute warning. Oh no, 10-minute warning. Okay, tell me about the food I ate. The food that I ate in Korea. The first day I had pakun. I actually asked for this, which is like gochujang. It's like the sweet chili paste that they have. This like miso, this like chili miso paste that they put in everything in Korea. It was literally home style. They put it in with some cooked pork and all the little plates of stuff, and that was awesome. That was the first day. That was actually the best meal that I had. Then they took me out for barbecue that night. That was honestly just like yakiniku in a way. The lunch was better. The next day they took me out to gamjatang, which is like a stewed pork ribs, pork on the bone, but they stew it for a couple of days so it just sort of falls off, in broth with potatoes and stuff. Apparently it's something that you have after drinking, but I had it for lunch and it was delicious. Third day they took me out for army stew. Army stew apparently comes from after the war. People scavenging for food would raid the rubbish bins at US bases and find all these tins of expired spam, and they would put the spam and these old packs of instant noodles into stew, like for, again, when everyone was destitute. And they found out actually that if you boil it in kimchi soup, spam and noodles and just any vegetables you can forage up, it's actually quite tasty, and it's actually now extremely popular in Korea, sort of as soul food for Korea. So they took me out for army stew. They call it army stew. Spam, noodles, broth, and vegetables, and that was delicious. And the final day, I was feeling like I'd had about a year's worth of sodium. I was worried about my kidneys, so I just got a sandwich on the final day. But yeah. Traffic there was crazy. Just, it's a very car town. The subway system, I went on once, and it was actually felt like I was on a Japanese subway system. It really looks identical. But the cars are just crazy. A 20-kilometer ride to the airport on the highway from where I was, that should be like a 15-minute drive, took 2.5 hours. It actually took, the flight is 2 hours and 5 minutes. It took longer to drive 20 kilometers from Gangnam to the inner city airport. than it actually took to fly from Seoul to Tokyo. So the traffic there remains insane, but still, it was a great week. How was the exchange rate coming from Japan to Korea? It was bad. Normally it's about 1-to-1, or normally it's something like everything in Korea is like discounted about 10-20%, but it was the other way now. It was like 100 yen was only worth like 8,000. 100 yen was, instead of being 80, because you added extra zero to it, it was like 800. So it was like everything, the yen was like 20% down on what it should be. Not as bad as the US exchange rate, but also in Korea they've had inflation. So, everything is expensive, and the yen is like 20% below what it should be, making everything 20% on top of the inflation. So it felt expensive. And I did tell everybody at work, oh, you've got to go to Japan right now because everything's going to be super cheap for you guys. So, yeah, the Soul Food House, believe in yourself. I've been to Soul Food House in Tokyo. Yeah, that's pretty good. 4 minutes. The 10-minute warning was 4 minutes ago, says Mr. Koichev. That's okay. We will charge through. I'm still 1 day in. What am I going to do? I got called out on celebrating the delivery of ATACMS long-range missiles to Ukraine, which does sound a little bit warmongery of me. I'm not warmongery. I want the war in Ukraine to end immediately, and I want Russians to not die and Ukrainians to not die. But one side, this is purely a one side attacking the other war, and all that they have to do is stop attacking. And if giving the side being attacked more weapons puts it into it faster, then good for it. So. My view is that it's justified and good, actually, to allow Ukraine to defend itself. That's justifiable. But some people said any violence is bad. Look, war is bad, but surrendering to Russia. Look at what happened the moment Russia got Bucha. Look at what happened when they got Mariupol. They just started massacring everybody. It's not, and that they'll keep going on to other countries. So my view is. I'm glad to see the successes that Ukraine's having, and I think I'm glad to see the world is ramping up aid to them, and I hope that Russia realizes it's not worth it, like they realized with Afghanistan, and they pick up and they go home and they stop harassing them. Don't be this guy. We finally got up to Johnny Somali. Okay, speed run. Let's see if there's anything here. Kitasenju, good for, I guess Kitasenju is kind of the ghetto. I don't really understand how that's an attractive region to live for women, although I used to live in that area. Oh yeah, Japan's terrible. Japanese lawmaker made Japan's Marjorie Taylor Greene made a comment violating the human rights of Ainu people, and she's been called up on that, so that's a good thing. Cow waste to be transformed into rocket fuel for space, a startup. Now, this is possible. Actually, Elon Musk's rockets are using methane, which technically is made out of cow crap. However, I call bullshit. I think that this story is just being made up. Or it is true, in which case it's still bullshit, I suppose, by definition. So there you go. I couldn't resist. They with the new cabinet appointments this week, they appointed 54. I think I mentioned this last week. 54 vice ministers were all men. But yeah, it's not that bad because 26 of them had cult ties, so it's worse, Yeah, it's not only were they sexist, but they're also corrupt cultists. So there you go. And that's actually, you know what? Because I was in Korea. I showed that during the week. So there we go. So because I was in Korea, I wasn't tweeting a lot, so I might actually catch up. Look at that. We've got a few days to go. The guy who used to be in charge of NHK was a raving racist, which he just recently proved in another survey. Kind of interesting to see that most parts of Japan in Kyoto News survey recognize that Japan needs more foreigners. They did a survey. So do we need to further increase the acceptance of more foreigners, foreign human resources? 80% of people, 30% said absolutely needed, 56 said, yeah, if they had to say one way or the other, needed. And in Shimane and Kochi prefectures with particular shortages, 100% of people said, yes, we need foreigners. So kind of good to see that. I mean, not that it's ever been that bad, but the acceptance thing is going up. Those are all the main stories that I've got. Good to see you. Good morning, Sadiq. Good to see you. Thank you for the good evening acknowledgement there. Oh, we've got a Softy Papa in here as well. Wow, we've got everybody in here. It's great to see you. I'm sorry if I've missed anybody. We are now up on time. Sorry for the slight delay at the beginning. Technical features. You know that they're a thing. But yeah, anyway, I think, did we get through the topics tonight? I got Korea versus Japan. I was talking about that. Oh, I can't even see what I called my show. Hang on a sec. Here it is. Cultural identity. Oh, I didn't talk about cultural identity. Okay. Oh, that turned into a chain tonight. I think okay. Final speed run on a topic that I accidentally skipped over. There was, and I retweeted it in the end of the day. Oh, that's right. There was someone who, here we go. I cringe a bit at this. It's this tweet. This person shows a video, Lauren Chen. She shows a video of a man who was born and raised in Japan. His family, this fellow on the screen right now. So apparently his family has been in Japan for 3 generations. He speaks fluent Japanese. Is he Japanese? To which I react, I cringe that she's asking that question. Should we take a vote on that person's identity? Who gives a crap? There's 2 answers to it, neither of which I know the answer to. Is he a Japanese national? That's a black and white question. And it's his business. I don't care. And the second is, what does he consider? Does he consider himself to be Japanese? Is it up to me to define him? I mean, again, we go on the debates and some other people agreed. Some people thought, no, I think we should identify him. Some people sort of agreed with me, and I said, I declare that man Puerto Rican. Let's get, if he wants a cultural identity from the internet, let's give him something interesting. I think that the whole idea of cultural this identity, and some people actually were asking the question, why do you think people attach so much identity to the location where they're born? And I think it's because that's what society does. Oh, Dan H, just back from Saudi Arabia. Welcome back. Safe landings. Glad that you can make it, Dan. Boom. Yeah. So just coming back to this, sort of one of the wisdom I wanted to share, the more elderly bruises and pain and experience that I want to share from this is there's a thing which I've learned sometimes. Sometimes you can get advice. I considered myself, and even in my teens and my 20s, to be like generally, I'd always pride myself on being more level-headed and calm and rational and mature, for my age. I thought I always was, and there's many times I've received advice saying that, I can tell you this, but you're not really going to understand it for like 10 years. And I'd get offended by that. I'd go, sure, I can understand that. And it's kind of true. You can understand this, but it's also true. There's certain types of advice I can give to people that they really won't understand until they're sort of biologically, until you hit a certain phase in life. There is a phase where, I think when it comes to identity, humans are by nature biologically programmed to be insecure about our identity. And, we attach it to our tribe, to where we're from, and so on. And we, as we go through life, eventually you stop feeling insecure, you stop feeling anxiety about it. You start to become comfortable at a certain point, which I found was in my 30s. As much as I felt I could have explained this to myself, and I still would have felt it. I'd still identify myself as New Zealand, and definitely not an Australian, and definitely not someone who listens to heavy metal music, and someone who likes, techno music, and, you're so tribal and trying to put yourself into groups of association, and I belong to that group of people, and I'm this identity and that identity, and this has really gone into the whole crazy identity politics thing going around us. What sort of people do you like to have sex with? What sort of people, do you consider, what sort of football team do you support? What country are you from, or whatever? And demanding that the world acknowledge you according to the criteria that you see yourself. And, I don't know, you sort of start to realize after about 30, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. All that matters is what you think of yourself, and what the people who you care about and who you actually, who actually know you, what they think. The people who don't know you, when you go to a convenience store and they hand you a fork, you can get round up that person gave me a fork because they thought because I'm a foreigner and they're racist, and, we need to educate the society not to give foreigners forks, or to ask them properly, and to call me Gaijin or Gaijin because I might be offended by that. But, in the end of the day, well, you get to a certain point where you realize, sure, if harm is intended, sure, but if harm's not intended, they don't matter. It doesn't matter what strangers think. A poll on the internet to decide the cultural identity of a person is just the most absurd. Could you imagine if we did an internet poll on whether this person is LGBT or Q or something else? Like, let's do a poll. Let's describe someone, and let's all take a vote on what we think, that person should identify as. It's ridiculous, right? It does. All that matters is what that person thinks. and what the people around him who actually know him think. And to most people who know you, they don't think of you as an LGBT, New Zealand, Japan, Australian, half Puerto Rican. They think of you as Hika, and that's all that I care. And what matters to me is, do the people who know me think I'm an asshole or not? It doesn't matter, like, am I, all this thing. I used to worry when I came to Japan, will they accept me? Will strangers accept me? It doesn't matter whether strangers accept you. And truth is, they actually accept you more than you think they would actually. People get so wrapped up projecting their insecurities onto other people, thinking the worst of others. Japanese are so much less racially focused, probably partly because the society is more homogenous, that they just don't think about race all the time as much as you do in diverse places. But yeah, you learn to chill out about it. But as much as I can tell my 25-year-old self, hey dude, don't worry about it. It really doesn't matter. And you'll realize that when you get to be about 30. And I'd get all offended saying, oh, I can understand that right now. I won't really. You don't really understand it. You do stop giving a shit at some point. That's where you do start to realize that the whole world doesn't really matter so much as what you think. But yeah, this person calling for an internet poll about the identity of someone else is ridiculous. That's my take on that. But and that is my hot take on cultural identity. So yeah, that's the end of the show. I am going to end it right there, and have a good evening. Kurostinchi, I often find myself going, I neither have the patience nor the crayons to explain this to you. That is an excellent quote there, Kurostinchi. I don't mind if I borrow that. Do what Aaron says. If you like, hit the like button. If you didn't like, hit the like button anyway. Hit it like it owes you money. And yes, I'll see you all next week. Remember, do take care. Remember, you can follow me on the site formerly known as Twitter that I refuse to call X, because I'm part of the X generation. It's part of my tribal identity, and I refuse to have it subsumed by corporate interests. No, I just can't handle change anymore. I'm going to call it Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Hang around, same bat time, same bat channel, 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time next week, and I will see you all later. Thanks to everybody. Bye-bye. Eric Bailey, wherever I call you. Have a nice weekend. Have a nice week to everybody. And yes, indeed. Boom. I'm going to end the stream. Ending stream. Clicking on the big red button just above the comments there. You can see end. When I click end there, it ends. Ending. See you later.